Hi, so this is Tara again. I am back to discuss something really important, and that is the power of presence and what body doubling is. So, most recently, I got a question on TikTok about body doubling. What is it? What is it used for? Um, and it was in response to a question that I asked, which was, what do you do in the event that, an unsafe person is trying to body double with you and you don't really want to do that? So, I'm going to be going over what bodily doubling is and what it is used for. So let's see if I can get this going. And it's going to be pretty short, but this presentation is called The Power of Presence, Body Doubling, Psychological Safety, and Finding Your Neurodivergent Sanctuary. So the overview, and I should probably move that, but anyway, the hidden burden. So for a lot of neurodivergent people, existing in like your neurotypical world requires constant exhausting camouflage. So that means masking for a lot of us, and a term that, well, the term is masking. What that means is, well, it incorporates hypervigilance. And essentially, what we're saying is that you have to constantly be aware, and not aware in the normal sense, more so aware of what you're saying, aware of what you're doing, aware of where you are. These are normal things, but to a much higher degree. So, the neurodivergent differences, sensory processing, executive functioning challenges. So, for some of us, too many sensory things going on in the environment can cause burnout. It can cause overwhelm. It can cause well, there are already executive dysfunction. Their executive dysfunction already exists. But when you have to do all of those things and there's a lot of sensory input, it can exacerbate executive functioning issues, but it can also lead to something called functional freeze. Functional freeze, for neurotypical people, it looks like doom scrolling. For neurodivergent people, it may be that you can't even figure out what you want to eat that day. You really just want to stay in your room and not go anywhere, do anything at all, because the idea of doing something more than what you are currently doing sounds like a task that cannot be overcome. There are also gendered expectations. So there is a social pressure around women in general, but more like this is specific for Black women. There's this social like pressure to be nurturing, social, and accommodating at all times, putting other people before yourself. And while that does go into that is a pressure of femininity in general for neurodivergent Black women or for Black women, period, it is to often disastrous extents. When you put those two things together and then you consider the unfortunately the down well, not even unfortunately, just the downsides of cultural marginalization, it's a double standard of racial bias that's already there, and the lack of cultural safe spaces, it leads to a level of exhaustion that is sometimes really difficult, exhaustion and burnout, that's sometimes really difficult to overcome. It's really difficult to come back from, and it's really difficult to like start building up your energy again if you don't have these structures in place to do so. So, what is body doubling? Body doubling is the practice of working on a task while another person is present. That can be physically, it can be virtually. You can actually have someone on the phone with you while you complete those tasks. And for a lot of us, it does make things easier. For example, you can think about going to your doctor's appointment, and you could be someone who just hates doctors. But think about going to your doctor's appointment and you have your friend on the phone with you because you're already anxious, but you also feel like the doctor may not hear what it is that you're saying. Something could happen, or maybe you're not actually interpreting what it is the doctor is saying because your sensory input, like the sensory input for this area, is so high that any message that they're sending is you're already filtering like 10,000 other things. You're not filtering what this person is saying and actually taking that in. So it acts as an anchor point for an individual. It essentially helps you to stay focused on one specific task. The neuroscience of shared focus. Why does the mere presence of another person unlock executive function? So there is dopamine regulation. A shared environment provides gentle, continuous stimulation. This passive input wakes up the executive function center of the brain without requiring exhausting active focus. So when you work with another person, if you, it's not even just for extroverted people, some introverted people also benefit from this. Where I don't know what it is and why, but there's a like a boost in serotonin or dopamine. They say it's, some people call it the karma anchor, but I don't really feel like it is. It's more of an accountability anchor. Knowing that someone else in the room is trying to accomplish something as well, it makes it less like, for me personally, it makes it less likely for me to talk to that other person because I know that they're focused on something. So I don't want to have a conversation. I also want to be focused on something. It can remove the stress from like high friction tasks. It makes it feel less threatening. If you hate doing dishes, if you have someone in the room with you, you may feel more amped to do dishes. And in some cases, there are people who would benefit from having a conversation with the person in the room so that they're not focusing on that particularly stressful event or task. So the mechanics of a session. What does a what does a body doubling session look like? You set your intent with your partner, whether you're virtual or you're in person or, whatever the case may be. You would sit and speak with that person. You share your specific goal for that session. What are some things that you can do? What are some things that you cannot do? So, for instance, if you're someone that does not benefit from talking, you would say, hey, so today I have to complete my homework, just as an example, or my thesis, whatever, you set your goal, and then that person, if they are also neurodivergent or even if they're just trying to accomplish something, they would tell you what their goal is going to be for that session and what they can't do. So my goal for this session is to work out for 30 minutes, but I can't speak to someone while I'm doing this, not just because of the, activity level. It's more so because if I start talking to you, chances are I'm not going to get anything done. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to listen to what it is that you have to say, and we're going to have a really great conversation, but then I'm still going to have to go to the gym at the end of the week. I don't want to do that. So the second step is the anchoring presence. So I'm someone that benefits from not having a conversation. I usually turn my microphone off. I eliminate distracting background noises. I'll set my phone across the room if it's not something that I have to use. And I'll keep my camera on so that the other person can actually see, like, what it is that I'm doing. And usually they'll keep their camera on as well so that there's that mutuality, but it also reduces visual, or at least for me, it reduces the, I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of like seeing another person on the screen makes my brain feel like, okay, so this is structured. Let's kind of keep this going. I don't need to look all over the room or go do something outside of frame. Step three, focused work. So you work independently within a defined time block. Usually it's about 25 minutes, especially if you're using the Pomodoro method. Some people are able to do it for longer, some people are not. It really just depends on what works for you. You can set breaks in between if you need to. That is something that you would want to discuss with your body doubling partner. Step four is a shared celebration. Some people do this, not everyone does, but you would check in at the end of the block, celebrate the effort and the focus, regardless of the actual output or perfection of the work. The fact that you just showed up, the fact that you did at least some portion of what it was that you were anticipating doing, or that was your goal, like, that's a win. And yes, I did use Gemini for this because, like, I have been kind of trying to figure out not just body doubling, but some other really helpful methods for accomplishing high stress tasks. But anyway, the crucial caveat that I really wanted to talk about is the wrong double. Body doubling only works if your nervous system is regulated. I'm going to say this, I know it's a part of the slide, but qualitative research on autistic women highlights a severe risk of double jeopardy and exploitation when navigating neurotypical spaces. So, for instance, if you are body doubling with someone that you would consider to be unsafe, let's say it's a coworker that you don't know very well, and this is your first time really being in the same space, having to work together on something outside of work, if your nervous system does not trust this person, or if you work in an environment where you already have to over function, people please, or mask certain personality traits or certain symptoms of neurodivergence, chances are that is going to happen again in that space with that person. If they are someone that puts your nervous system on high alert, if you feel anxiety around them, if you feel stressed out, if you feel nervous, this is probably not a person that you're going to want to body double with, because it is going to stress you out to a point where you're probably not going to accomplish the task. And for a lot of us, what ends up happening is that we berate ourselves after this, or after the body doubling session, because we didn't get what we wanted to get accomplished. Another thing that I have personally experienced is having another person there that I do not feel safe with, and feeling like I am responsible for this goes into people pleasing, but feeling like I'm responsible for guiding the session or helping them get their thing accomplished instead of actually working on what it is that I need to do. Also, it can lead to hypervigilance. And it isn't something that you may notice immediately, but you may notice that you're on edge. You're watchful of people around you shortly after the session. Your body is still in that anxiety field that you were in with that person, and you haven't had a moment to settle down. So that can happen as well. So you really do want to be careful who you choose to body double with. If it's not somebody that you know very well, not someone that you have an interaction with, which can be helpful, then that might work for you, but it's really finding what works best for you. Recognizing your environment, the masked versus authentic doubling diagnostic. Here's how you know if you're masking, and here's how you know if it's an authentic doubling session, if it's a safe space. If you are worrying constantly about your facial expressions and resting face, if you are not able to get your task done because you are having a severely for me, sometimes I'll be completely honest, it's trauma inducing. If you're having a trauma inducing internal dialogue, and it's not something that you normally have when you are body doubling safely, this might not be the safe space that you think it is. And that's not to say that there's something wrong with that person, but it is to say that this is just not cohesive for what it is like you're trying to accomplish. If you're apologizing for getting distracted or for needing a break, if you are apologizing for doing something differently than what you feel normal people would do it, or quote unquote normal people, that means that you've already started judging yourself and you're trying to mask. So look out for that sign specifically, but there may be some others that I'm not covering here. You'll know. Feeling immense pressure to prove your productivity to the room. If you feel like you constantly have to be doing something and that you cannot sit for a moment and just kind of figure out what it is you need to do next, that is probably a sign that this is not going to be a productive space. At the end of it, if you feel profoundly drained and exhausted, that is another sign that this is not a safe space. Authentic doubling, you might fidget freely. You're probably going to, I use stim aids. A lot of people with ADHD do use stim aids while they're body doubling, turning the camera off if sensory overload hits. So for instance, if you or your partner are starting to feel like, okay, I can't, with you on the screen, sending a quick message like, hey, I'm just going to cut my camera off for a little bit is usually okay. Experiencing zero judgment for non-linear or neurodivergent work styles. So for me, I will have to put, like if I'm cleaning to a degree, this isn't all the time, but sometimes, I will put things in one corner and I will gradually pick from that corner and put things to where they're supposed to be until I forget, and then I'll move on to another task. You should be able to do that without being judged. You should feel grounded at the end of the session. You should feel peaceful afterwards. You should even feel accomplished. If you're not feeling that, it might be time to sit with yourself and kind of figure out like what's going on. So the empirical power of affirming spaces, reviewed data confirms that support must be culturally and neurologically safe to be effective. So, identity validation, you don't need to be pathologized. If you were body doubling with someone, or if you were in a space where um, you feel the need to constantly be justified, or you feel the need to justify your existence in that space, or someone else has to, I call it compartmentalization. They have to compartmentalize you into a certain box. Like, instead of just being able to say, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Is what is your goal for today?" They're like, "Hey, bro, what's up?" Or maybe not that specifically. That sounds really cliche, but essentially, they can't communicate without hinging on some form of AAV. Well, AAVE, excuse me. Um, or they need to know specifics like, oh, hey, where are you from? But they're not asking like, what city or state are you from? They're asking more like, where do your people hail from? It might not be a safe space. Shared experience. It's so I'm not saying that everyone who body doubles needs to be neurodivergent. It really doesn't have to be, the other person doesn't have to be neurodivergent. They don't, but if they understand where you're coming from, if they understand at least the basics of what it is that a body double is, that can also be an affirming space. Um, One thing that studies have found is that identity validation, shared experience, usually they do lead to clinical transformation. There's a therapeutic, and I have to stand up now because I've been sitting for too long. I don't like it. Um, and forgive me, I have now lost my train of thought, and I'm not going to edit this out. So here we are. They've noticed that there are clinical transformations in executive functioning outcomes for neurodivergent people versus neurotypical people when it comes to body doubling and affirming spaces. A massive frontier study in Canadian ADHD research confirmed that when neurodivergent individuals receive identity affirming accommodations, anxiety and depression drop significantly. Support isn't just nice to have, it is clinically protective. So, how do you find your safe sanctuary? Some safe corners that I have personally researched include Inger Shea, Black Women with ADHD. It is a website. If you put her name in, Black Women with ADHD will come up. There are a lot of really helpful articles. Stacy, I hope I'm not pronouncing the second name wrong, but Stacy Michelle, ADHD is the New Black. She is humorous. And I like her channel. If you get a chance, check it out. There is Ruby Osunsola. She is the founder of Black Autistic Meetup. It is a Zoom meeting. I believe the time zone is United Kingdom time zone. But put in her name or Black Autistic Meetup and it'll definitely come up in Google search or whatever search engine you're using. Tori and Sims, Sisters with ADHD. That is also, it's her website is chocked full of accessible resources and empowering content. So if you do get an opportunity to look up any of these people, I think it would be really beneficial. I also think it's important to think of community as medicine. While body doubling is a tool that provides an anchor, especially if you're doing so with your community members, the environment, it has to apply a certain level of psychological safety for it to actually be used as a healing medicine. If you do take anything away from this presentation, mutual acceptance and belonging has been proven. They have proven protective factors against the high burnout and depression in neurodivergent women. And I'm kind of blocking out some portions of it, but I forgot to move my my little thing here. I think I'll do that for the next presentation. But lastly, rise together. You just, I don't know what's wrong with me today. You deserve a space where you don't have to explain yourself, where you can drop the mask, anchor your focus, and achieve your goals in absolute psychological safety. Feel free to join us on Sharewell. The group is tomorrow at 6 p.m. Actually, no, it is today at 6 p.m. Um, it's a dedicated space for Black neurodivergent women. Feel free to stop by. It is going to be about an hour long, so we'll be talking about some basic stuff, just the group itself, but also anything that might come to mind. Yeah, feel free to check us out. Thank you for stopping by.